praying, oh God, like I want to use the things that you've given me in my life and my, like who I am and the talents that I have. I want to use it to bring glory to you and never, ever, ever to tear people down, because that is the opposite of bringing glory to God, you know? And so that doesn't mean that everything is Christian, you know, like I'm writing songs now that's just kind of coming from me personally and different thoughts in my head, but that aren't like Christian songs. But it's never to like tear people down, and that's more to just. Does that make sense?
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. And I still carry that with me today. I'm talking a long time, so I'm going to wrap it up. But I still carry that with me today, and still think about that. Like, is what I'm doing bringing glory to God? And is it like showing love? Is it building people up? Is it, you know?
Yeah.
And so with my job now, I even still think about that. I'm grateful that God was bold enough to slap me, you know?
Yeah.
Of course he is, so.
And then how did you decipher, like you said that you were going into nursing, how did you kind of, I guess, thinking that that's your calling is going into nursing, and then being like, I guess having an aha moment and just being like, oh, I guess he's calling me into something greater and bigger.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. The word calling, I think, is a really weird word. It can get really confusing, and I think like when I got out of high school, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, God, where are you calling me to go first and foremost? Like if I don't go to the right place, maybe I'm not going to meet my future spouse. Maybe I'm not going to get the degree that I want, and it's not going to lead me to the job that I need to be at, and I'm not going to meet like my lifelong friends that I need to meet, and I'm going to mess up my call for my life and your will, God. Oh my gosh. Like that's so intense and crazy.
And you're supposed to have everything figured out at like 18 years old, like your whole life.
That's ridiculous. But we can kind of feel that way when we have a wrong perspective of what calling and like God's will is. And so we've talked about it so much that God's calling for all of our lives is to bring glory to him. And I think we can do that in whatever way way possible. So I think if I would have finished nursing school, I think I would have still been following a call of God to be a light in the medical field for people, to bring glory to God. And I think that would have been in the calling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which Sarah could probably speak on that because she's about to graduate nursing school and is going to be doing just that, which is awesome. But how I decided is really, I knew what I was really passionate about. And as I was in nursing school, and I went really far in it, I just, and then stopped at the last second. A lot of time, but it was worth it to realize like what I really wanted to do. And I got really caught up in what other people wanted me to do instead of what I wanted to do. And it clouded my brain. And so when I finally realized, I don't know. Okay, let me back up. When I was in school, you asked me. You asked me. They can see on the camera. I talk with my hands. It's really hard for the people that are just listening, but when I was in nursing school, just imagine. When I was in nursing school, I spent all of my time serving at church on the worship team, doing music.
That's not going to work.
That's not going to work, Sarah. You're right. She knows. I didn't study at all. And so I had a really hard time in school, and I failed twice, and I tried to keep going, but then I did the same thing. You know, I just spent all of my time here at church. And then I had a life-changing conversation with my dad who just said, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, well, I don't know. Everybody else wants me to do this. He's like, well, what do you want to do, Kyle? I was like, well, apparently I want to work for the church. Apparently, Dad. I've never been on the news before.
I've never been on a podcast before.
Like, okay, yeah, apparently I want to work for the church and do music. And he's like, well, then do that. And then do it for the glory of God and do it with all your heart. Oh, it's that easy? Yeah. Oh, okay. And I think that's it. That's what I'm doing, you know?
That's it.
Yeah. So I would encourage any student, like if you don't know what to do, well, what are you passionate about? God has put that passion in you for a reason. He created you, like obviously. Unless it's like a passion that's like very clearly against God, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean. But when there's like this desire to do something in life, I think it's there for a reason because God created you. So now go do it for the glory of God.
Yeah.
Like, do it to make His name famous. And do it with all your heart and with all your passion. And the world needs that, you know? Anyways.
Yeah, that's good.
So take the pressure off. Okay.
You don't have to have it all figured out, you know, because, like, your story is pretty cool. Like, the way that the Lord kind of, like, made that path for you. And, like, I'm sure you learned a ton throughout that. And I'm sure all of you guys, too, with your stories of how you came to music. Like, the Lord works in mysterious ways. And we don't know all the ways. We may never know. Hopefully one day we'll get to ask Him face to face. But, yeah, my story, I've always loved music and kind of grown up just singing. And this is kind of an embarrassing story. But
Great.
I'll tell you.
Yeah, we needed one.
My mom loves to tell this story. So when I was growing up, we had like this book of Psalms in the bathroom, which is just, yeah. Anyway, and so when I was in the bathroom, I would just take the Psalm book, you know, just gotta occupy yourself. I would just like sing the Psalms like from the book. And my mom would like, not like weirdly, not like creepily, but she would like listen sometimes and just like, I don't know, she's like, that's interesting. My child is just occupying themselves with the Psalm book, which is probably, I don't know, it's a good thing to occupy yourself with.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's just like a little sneak peek into my childhood and kind of how I just grew up like singing and like thankful that my parents raised me in just like a loving Christian home and kind of like fostered that like growth of worship in my heart and in my life and like encouraged me in that. And I think middle school, high school like freshman year is kind of when I kind of like branched out more and started leading worship for kids ministry and high school, stuff like that. And I think the Lord can really use people and like amazing people to also like encourage you. So like my parents and people like Kyle and other worship pastors that have in high school and churches and stuff back home, like who have really been able to just encourage me in that. And I think as I've gotten older and gotten just closer to the Lord in college, I really realized too that how much I love worship and how, I don't know, I think it will always be something that I just run to. Like Kyle said, I'm in nursing school. I graduate in December, which is so exciting.
Yay, you're so close.
Really excited. Lots of hard work. And I'm really excited to see what the Lord does through that. And how He can use me and work in and through me to speak to people too. And I've already gotten to have some really cool conversations with some patients who are in some of their darkest times. When you're in the hospital, it's usually not for a good thing unless you're having a baby. That's pretty much the only time that it's more of a joyful time in the hospital. But yeah, just some really good opportunities to just be a light for Christ. And that goes with anything, you know, any job. It doesn't matter what that is. It's all can be a form of worship as long as your heart is in the right place and like you're seeking to glorify Him through your actions or you're having a hard day, like nursing is very hard. Like you're on your feet all day and working with people and have to make sure that you prioritize your time well and things like that. Like stewarding all of those gifts, like, is worship to the Lord too, and like He sees that. And music too can also kind of be intertwined with that also, because music can just touch a place like in our hearts that words and actions I don't think ever would be able to. And I just think it's so amazing how the Lord created music to be able to do that.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
Maybe I should.
Going long.
Do you have a question,
okay, maybe I
Kyle?
will. Yeah. So my job, like I get paid to lead worship at church
Yeah.
and help put on services. Like I get paid to do that. Sarah is in nursing school, about to be a nurse, but serves without getting paid at church. And both being a nurse and serving at church is worship. And I don't know any questions that I was going to ask. I just wanted to point that out. Like you can use your gifts for the church, which is a beautiful thing. Like we need people like to be creative and bring yourself and your gift to the local church so that we can be a light. We're better together. And just like, even if it's not your job to work for the church, like still bring your gifts to the church. We need each other. You know what I mean? So I don't know. There's something cool in there. I don't know any questions, but if you wanted to speak to that, you could. I thought a question would come, but
I agree with that. I mean, I definitely thought about pursuing music ministry in college, but I really felt like nursing was what the Lord wanted me to do. And just like continuing to trust Him with that like, okay, Lord, like you have your way, like in my life and my heart, like my hands are open and my heart is open to whatever He wants to do. So, I don't know.
That's a good place to be.
Yeah.
Me? Okay. No, for me, I grew up, my mother always had some sort of music playing. Wasn't always worship, but just any sort of music playing. So I always grew up with this love of music, not always thinking like, oh, like I could do it, but it was just like I just always have it going. And then when I was in middle school, she kind of gave us, me and my brother, this like we had to. She was like, you have to learn an instrument.
okay.
And so I was like, okay, sweet. And I wanted to play guitar so bad. But my brother was like, no, that's mine. Find something else. And so I was like, only thing I could think of, I was like, just do drums or whatever. It's not really like the coolest thing, but I was like, I'll do it. Started playing, and then one day I was like, you know what? No. Guitar is pretty dang cool. I mean, I don't know. I'm looking at Nathan whenever he plays. I'm always like, but yeah. But then I got older, was playing for not nearly long enough. I should have waited way longer, but decided I would audition, and Kyle was the person that I went to.
Wow.
And I remember
How old are you?
I was 11 or 12.
Crazy.
Yeah, not nearly old enough at all. And
He was
I remember-
really good for an
I was-
11 or 12-year-old, but not
but
that
overall,
great.
I was
But not that
terrible.
great. But you were pretty
So
good for
bad.
11-year-olds.
But there was so much potential.
There you go.
for 11 years old. You were good,
Nice way of
but
saying it. Yeah.
overall.
But not that great.
And I remember he told me when I made the team, he was like, "Okay, it's gonna be 6 to 3 months before you start playing, so you can get to know like everyone."
6
and
to
I was
3?
like,
Or 3 to 6.
6 to 3 to 6.
3 to 6.
6 to 3.
Yeah.
Sorry, 3 to 6 months before you'd start playing. And I was like, okay, cool. And I remember 3 days after that, he was like, called me and was like, hey, can you play this kids conference that we're having?
Yeah.
And I was
desperate.
like, sure. And so I
Not
played
good
that,
leadership on
You're
and it was
obedient.
also
He
it was
said
just
yes.
Bad leadership on my part.
the worst thing ever. I did so bad. I remember just like
No, Bradley, you practiced so hard. You
but it
poured
was
your
still
blood,
so
sweat,
bad.
and tears. Practiced. It was a VBS, so it was like 3 nights in a row. And the entire day, Bradley would practice. And would come, I've been practicing all day. And then we'd play, and it was like,
practice did nothing.
wow, Bradley.
He really improved.
The practice paid off.
So much hard work. You impressed me. You did such a good job.
At 11
What?
years old.
At 11 years old.
Child prodigy. There you
No,
go.
Look at you.
But and then I remember just like the first few years of me playing was just like all I thought about was like, dang, that's pretty cool, playing drums. That's pretty cool. I never really thought of it as like a, man, I feel like I want to do this. And I remember I don't remember what grade, but I was older middle school, maybe just high school. And I was at a youth conference. And I remember like pastor talking about like future, thinking about what you want to do. And I remember just sitting there and I was thinking to myself like, God, like, what am I supposed to do? And I thought about everything, and over it was like a 3-day thing. And every day I thought about it, and the only, like, when I would think about worship, I just had this peace that I didn't have with anything else. And so I didn't like jump to it right away. Yeah, music. I didn't jump to it right away. I was like, this is what I was supposed to do. But I took my time, and I remember like the day I decided, I was like super nervous because I was like, I'm like 15, 16 years old. Like, how is God going to use me right now? Like, this is a future thing. And I remember my mom told me, she was like, why does your age matter? She was like, don't let that.
Come on now.
Don't let
Go,
that,
mama.
What is that going to do? So I was like, you're right. Like, this is what I feel called to do, and this is what I'm going to do. And I remember after that, it was just like opportunities just opened up super wide. So I started serving at my church for 3-4 years, and just playing. And then after that, and just everything's opened up, and it's just like over time, it's just like this confidence in this, like, in the calling towards like music and worship, and it's just like this peace that's just like constantly I just have over. It's like I think about, because I'm always thinking like, okay, like, is music really gonna be like the total thing? Like, am I really gonna be able to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner with music? Provide for myself, but it's like anytime I think about like, okay, yeah,
Maybe lunch and dinner.
Well, lunch and dinner probably. But it's like I don't have peace with anything else, because I'm like, oh, I can do this, but it's like, could I really? But every time I think about worship and music, it's just that like peace, like, yeah, that's it. So I think for me, it's been an over time thing that I've really just had to really just focus on.
Yeah.
You're 18, so it's
That's
like
good.
you are in a place where a lot of these students will be either next year or in a few years of like, what do I want to do?
Yeah.
And like you're in that stage right now, and going to pursue like music for the church, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah. But I think it's also a thing where I had to realize that I don't have to have it all super figured out
Take the pressure
right
off.
now.
Yep.
As I mean, like all like 17, it's like constant. I think you hit 16 and people are like, so what are you gonna do? Where are you gonna go to college? What are you gonna do after college? And you're just like, I just learned how to drive. Like, let me just.
Yeah. Every time you meet new people, it's all
Like,
those
what do
are
you want
the
me to do?
questions.
And so, but it's like, so it's really just been like recently, within the past year or so, that I've really been like, why do I have to have it all figured out? I mean, I'm not going to wait till I'm like 30 and be like, oh, well, I'm still figuring it out, guys. But it's like, it's still like I have time to really figure out where I'm supposed to go. Like, I know the destination where I want to go, but I'm still trying to figure out the way. And so it's like, okay, to take your time, and so I don't rush into things.
And along the way of trying to figure it out, you can live a life of worship. So even as you study in school, or even as you're trying to figure out life, whatever you do, whether you eat or drink, do it all for the glory of God.
Yeah.
So even when you're in the journey of like, I don't know what's going on, I don't know what I want to do, you can still use that as an opportunity to worship, which I think is super cool, Bradley. That's awesome.
Shout out to Kyle for making it happen.
Wow,
didn't
that's
make it
kind of
happen.
crazy.
If it
that
wasn't
cool?
for Kyle,
That's
I
wild.
wouldn't
No,
be here.
that's not true.
No, I would be on a different podcast. No, but Kyle was
You were
one
good
that,
enough,
the one that
Bradley.
pushed me.
Anybody in my position would
Like,
have.
it would have definitely taken.
let
I
you
mean,
do it.
I still would have been here, not here, but like I still would have been in this position where it's like worship. But I mean, I don't know how long it would have
knows
taken
where,
me.
yeah.
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 It's like Kyle was the one that pushed me. So it's also great to have those people in your life that just like, even if you don't have the confidence in yourself, there's somebody else that,
Believes in
even
you.
if they're slightly lying to you, saying that you're good.
Hey, you were good for an 11-year-old.
Hey,
Good is relative, you know?
it could mean anything.
Yeah.
Dude, you're good.
Compared to
This guy over here.
No, that's cool. There's kind of a theme of like this safe space when you're learning how to be creative and use a gift that God's given you, and to have people in your life, like the importance of people, to call out those things. And yeah, I think it's really important. Which I hope we can find in the church. Like, bring your gifts to the church and let this be a safe space where you can like comfortably fail and then be like encouraged and instructed to continue to grow in your gift and creativity. And like, I don't know, I think it's really cool. Bring it. Rock on.
I already
Okay.
went.
Yeah, I forgot. So, well, a very condensed version of my story is my parents went to church, but I didn't really care about church until a lot later than a lot of people. But for me, musically, I always loved music. My dad loved music. He's like big into vintage audio stuff and like always has been. Cool. So we'd always listen to like records and different things. And so, but the music that I listened to growing up, I could listen to Frank Sinatra. Like, I love Frank Sinatra. And then like Strangers in the Night is my favorite. That's my favorite Frank Sinatra album. So I listen to that, and then I can listen to like, yeah,
Rock on.
I can listen to like, classic rock, like AC/DC, Metallica, Iron Maiden, all that stuff, and then a lot of that stuff actually. And then, but I'd also listen to like Bob Dylan. I was a big Bob Dylan guy. I like John Denver. I don't anymore, but for some reason I did then. I was big into CCR, but that was the kind of stuff I did. So I was playing, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But I was playing that stuff for a long time, and since I was 9. And I played, but it wasn't really like a main part of my life. I was super into skateboarding at the time. That was like my main thing.
All right.
And so I would go and travel around and skate at different skate parks and do cool stuff like that. But music was kind of like a secondary thing for me. And when I got saved between my sophomore and junior year of high school, I got saved, and I wasn't at all looking for it. Right? I was so far outside the will of God and did not even care to make any changes there. I don't want to say I was content with where I was, because I definitely wasn't happy. I definitely realized that my life was lacking something, and I didn't know what that was. But somewhere in that summer, God started doing something in my heart and slowly started drawing me near to Him. And by the end of that summer, I knew what I was missing. And my friend group, when they kind of caught wind of what was going on, by the time it was the first day of school my junior year, we had a table that we sat at every morning and before school started, and I went and I sat down at that table. Everyone was already there. I went and I sat down at the table, and the second I sat down, everybody stood up and moved one table over and sat down. No. And so I knew, like,
Yeah.
I knew that this was going to be tough. If that's what I wanted to do, it was going to be tough. And I was going to be going kind of in some unknown. But I knew that I was missing something. And what I felt God kind of drawing me into was kind of filling that void, right? And so I decided this is what I'm going to do, right? And that told me that these guys really weren't my friends after all, So so I started to kind of just figure out what that was, right? Who is God, and what is this all about? What's going on inside of me? And so for a year or so, as I kind of spent some time figuring that out, but shortly after I kind of had that separation with all of my friends, I met this other guy who was he was well known in the school, really involved in the church. He had done this like 500-mile walk thing and was on the cover of some magazine. And
Wow.
but he was really involved in this youth group, and I didn't know him at all. But he just started talking to me one day, and we became really close. And he helped me figure out a lot of this stuff and actually get on a path and find resources to get on track. And so I owe a lot of it to him. And I slowly built up a new friend group. You know, I started getting involved in my church that my parents had gone to. And I did some stuff with the worship team then, but I played guitar and I sang a little bit, but it still wasn't really something that I just wanted to do. I just liked music, and so I was doing that. But around my senior year, I started teaching this Bible study, and I felt a lot more comfortable with Scripture, and I felt that God's purpose for me was to share the gospel with people, right, and to tell people about Him. All right, which is a pretty general calling, but the way I took it was, I want to pursue being a pastor. I felt that's what God was ultimately calling me to, and so I worked hard. I did a lot of Bible study things. I did a lot of little practice sermons and stuff. This book is from high school, and it has every sermon that I've written is in this book.
That's so cool.
My Sunday school lessons, my Bible study stuff, it's all in here. And I actually have a second book now, but this is the original one. But I carry it with me in case I get somewhere and it's man, that's a cool thought, and I'll write it down, and then I'll elaborate on that thought. But so I decided I was going to go to Dallas Baptist because at the time they were doing I forgot what it was called, but it was like a college days thing where you go and you just hang out for a day. They give you a tour and then a T-shirt. And
the
everything.
T-shirt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every time
And so I went and I did that, and I was like, yeah, that's where I'm going to go, right? And I'm going to do this. I'm going to get a degree in biblical studies, and I'm going to be a pastor. And so I got everything set up, and one of my friends was living at my house at the time because his parents had just moved out of town, and he had nowhere to go. But he was going to go to DBU as well for biblical studies. So my parents let him stay with us a couple months until we moved there. And so he moved there, and then I was going to move shortly after. And I think he had moved up there on a Monday, and that Friday I found out that my parents were going to get divorced. And when that happened, it just kind of threw another wrench in everything, and I couldn't afford at that point to go to DBU to be a pastor. And so I was very confused because I was like, God, I felt such a strong conviction to this, and I made all of these plans and I did all of this stuff, and yet here we are, and I can't do it. And I feel like there's nothing that I could have done to really change this. This is all outside of my control. And so I, in a way, blamed him for a while, but I just didn't know really where to put that in everything. And so I had to figure out, now what am I going to do? What do I want to do? So I talked to a guy. He's the associate pastor at the church I'm at now, and I'd known him my whole life, and we went to youth group together and stuff. And he talked to me about kind of the same thing you talked about where our passions meet our calling, right? And so, what are the things that you love? What are the things that you feel like you have a natural inclination to? And then what are the things you feel God calling you to, right? And I enjoyed music. I really like music, and I felt like I would spend a lot of time in it. And so he's like, you know what, while you're here, let's just get you involved with music, because you can still share the gospel. You can still, show people, what God's doing in your life through music. And so I started doing that. And from that point on, it was kind of one thing after another, like you said. It's just, doors opening up, and I just continued on down this path, and it's like, okay, well, maybe this is what God wants me to do. So I started pursuing, all right, I'm going to be a worship leader. And so I led at the BSM for like 3 years at TJC, and then led a midweek service at my church, led at the youth group for a long time, but could never really find somewhere up till this day. Actually, I'm still like, I don't lead worship at a church. I teach Sunday school at my church now. I help out a lot of churches whenever they need, some fill-in stuff for different events, but I still haven't really found a place, where I'm leading. And up until recently, that had kind of bothered me too, because I kind of felt like I was in the same spot where I was before, where it's like, okay, guys, so here we are again, at this place. And so the whole time, like, I worked at FedEx for almost 10 years, and then I now work at a hospice. It's like not even close to what I want to do, but I realized, kind of going through all of this, like I was kind of looking back recently on this journey that I had been on, and thinking about this guy Jeff Johnson. He used to lead at Breakaway at Texas A&M, and one thing he told me is that don't rush it. Right, this is God's timing. He told me that he had worked for this answering service for 13 years before he got his first job at a church, right? And so we talked about that, and I was kind of thinking back about that and just thinking about this whole journey and realizing that there are so many things that I had gone through that in the midst of it, I was like, man, this is terrible. Like, this is the absolute worst. I don't understand any of this. But then like a year later, it's like, man, look what God taught me through all of this, right? And so recently I started looking into worship. What is worship and what is prayer? What are all of these things about? And I kind of came to this conclusion that, what I need to focus on is figuring out, instead of looking back at all of these moments and thinking, man, when I was in the midst of this was terrible, but look what God showed me. Like, I just need to stay in this place of joy, resting in this, kind of Psalms, Psalm 23, trusting that God is leading me along the path, and like we talked about, and it's the obedience, that he's called me to. And so it might not look like you think it will look, when you're 18 trying to figure out, what are you going to do? It might not look like you think it's going to look in 5 years, for like students who are struggling with, I want to do this, but I just don't know, or even if you have a plan, like I had a plan, I knew exactly what I was going to do, and it didn't happen, right? Because God had another plan, and I'm extremely thankful that I've gone down the path that I've gone down, because I realize how just like unequipped I would have been going into it then. Like, there's so many lessons I've learned along the way, and the compassion that I have now towards people, like I did not have then. Like, I was kind of just pursuing my own stuff, wanting to do my own thing, and I didn't understand shepherding at all. I didn't understand, the heart of God and all of that, and I wouldn't have learned that if it weren't for this. And so I would say the takeaway from where I'm at and my kind of journey getting to where I am is that you just got to trust in God. You just got to be obedient, because you might know what you want to do, but God might have another plan, and really the obedience is what he's looking for. So
That's good. That's really good.
Which comes down to like the cost of worship. We have these dreams, but then we lay it down and surrender. Say, God, what do you want?
yeah.
It's like, anyways, cost. So.
Well, that was really good. Thank y'all for being here, especially coming from work and coming from Dallas and your sister's wedding. So thank y'all for being here. This is awesome. Y'all are the best.
Thanks, Sydney. Thanks,
Fun.
Nick.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Come back anytime.
We love you, students. Rock on.